Welcome back to Azimuth Podcast. I'm Barrett McNabb, and with me is Kimberly McNabb.
What was more surprising than October 7th? Swastikas being waved in Palestinian protest? Chants of "from the river to the sea"? FYI, there's only one river they mean, the Jordan River, and they mean the Mediterranean Sea, which is the opposite of a two-state solution. Free Palestine! Well, per Wikipedia, despite having a lefty founder, it is defined as an armed movement and community organization that opposes the very existence of Israel. Globalize the Intifada. The word translates to shaking off. And I don't mean Taylor Swift.
Right.
Which it seems mild compared to these other chants, but the entire globe shaking off of Jews, which is exactly what Palestinians were fighting in both Intifada, shaking the Jews off where? Off the face of the earth.
That's right.
And now we're calling for a caliphate. And Barrett, what does a caliphate mean?
Yeah, so there's been multiple caliphates throughout history, but it's where a religious Muslims lived under the leadership of the caliph, who was considered to be a successor to Muhammad. Now, that's where you get the difference between Sunni and Shia, was an argument over who was going to succeed Muhammad, whether it was going to be elected or whether it was going to be of relation. And it's the same thing that happened to the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church when there was a schism there, was over the right of succession. Obviously, the Catholics went to a voting as opposed to a direct descendancy of any of the apostles. But still, so women were oppressed under the caliphate because they were confined to the domestic sphere, and their role centered on support to their militant husbands and ideological upbringing of their children. And under the last caliphate, the Muslim empire went all the way into southern Spain, which is and ruled southern Spain for almost 700 years until the French helped push out the Muslims out of Spain. So you see a lot of archaeological, similarities to a lot of the Islamic temples and things like that. And just recently, on the southernmost point of Spain in Gibraltar, we have Saudi Arabia built a huge mosque there, and it's the largest mosque that's outside of the Middle East.
And so they really don't know what they're talking about, wanting a caliphate where women are limited to the home. I mean, come on.
Right.
I mean, I don't think they know what they're talking about. Now, was it a violent regime?
Yeah. I mean, they conquered all of those territories in order to do it.
Be careful what you wish for.
Right.
And sadly, every day I get more and more surprised. I think I can't get any more surprised. It has even reached to small children, not just these punk college students. Small children, 5 years old, in Sydney, Australia, are being taught to do these same chants.
Yeah, it's interesting to see this as well, because children don't know any better. Now, you would say college students don't know any better either, because they're of the just the raw parroting of slogans and things like that. But small children truly don't know any better. And so I think it's extremely wrong.
They don't even know their left foot from the right foot.
Yeah, so to get them to be tricking them into doing these chants and stuff like that, let's take a look.
We have a bit of a clip of that, and this particularly concerned me, Holly. I'd like to get your view on it, because we have young children, as young as 2 and 4, being encouraged to join this encampment and chanting anti-Israel slogans. Take a listen.
Intifada, Intifada, Intifada. The river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free.
5, 6, 7, 8, Israel is a terrorist state.
Holly, I know you've been very vocal on this issue of anti-Semitism, but children that age chanting for what we know was a wave of terror attacks.
Genocide, they're calling for there. They're calling for suicide bombers into Israel. That's what it actually means. And how that's not hate speech, how that is not child abuse.
I mean, that's a great point. I mean, here you are, you're indoctrinating a small child who, again, doesn't know any better, and you're their parent, and they're looking up to you.
Yeah, we're doing such a bang up job of ABCs and 2 + 2 is 4 that let's introduce some hate. I mean, come on. None of these people are educated, but unlike on the Azimuth podcast, you can no longer consider yourself uneducated like these protesters.
And what would you say is the main goal with tonight's protest?
I think the goal is just showing our support for Palestine and demanding that NYU stop. I honestly don't know what NYU's doing.
Is there something that NYU's doing?
I really don't know. I'm pretty sure they're... Do you know what NYU's doing? About what? About Israel. Why are we protesting here?
Palestine will be free!
I wish I was more educated.
Well, you guys are educated by watching Azimuth podcast.
That's right.
But, none of these supposed places for higher learning are educating these people, much less standing up. These people have never been told no by parents, teachers, definitely not the deans. They don't tell people no. And why are they in charge? People in positions of authority are supposed to make decisions, and it takes a decision to tell someone no. Think about it. If you just simply say yes, well, it was their idea.
Right.
So you're not making the decisions when you just say yes. Why are you even there? Why are you making the $900,000 a year like President Gay of Harvard? Yes, everyone says she was fired. No, she lost her position as a dean or the president, and she still teaches classes making $900,000 a year, and people wonder
crazy.
why their tuitions are so high.
That's crazy. But you're right. They should have put a stop to this on day one. This goes exactly to a theme that we've talked about before, the broken windows, where you let little things slide, and then all of a sudden you start to see major crime. So the faculty should have absolutely just put the kibosh on this stuff from day one. Now, Columbia did do that. They had the NYPD come in, and obviously they were extremely heavily criticized. AOC said that this was a travesty and things like that. But still, Columbia let the protests go back, asked them to leave, didn't leave. So now they're committing a crime of trespassing, asked them to take their encampments down, didn't do it, gave them a suspense, did negotiations with them, and said, look, we're going to have to start suspending people if you stay. If you leave now, we're going to take your name, you'll sign a piece of paper, and no harm, no foul. But the response was that the Columbia students broke into and overtook the dean's office in the dean's building and held on to it and barricaded themselves in. So we have property damage. We have, they're robbing people of the ability to do their administrative work. It's hard for students to be taking classes and final exams and things like that. And so, we have graduations that have been canceled. When's the last time that happened?
2020, so
Okay.
If my math serves me correctly, they would have been graduating high school where they missed another
good point.
graduation. So, I guess it is a good thing to have kindergarten graduation and 5th grade graduation and 8th grade graduation. Maybe it finally serves a purpose.
Right. That's an excellent point. We kind of make fun of all these little graduations. Really, well, I kind of see it as really only 2, high school and then higher education.
Right. Well, aren't we worried that if people say these chants, say violent things enough times, they become more emboldened, other people start to believe them, they start to believe themselves, and then finally they're not satisfied with just talking. Oh, now they must act. And, a girl has already been stabbed in the eye with a Palestinian flag, and isn't it just a guy's been tased? Isn't it just an amount of time before someone gets killed?
Right. So let's take a look at this tasing clip. He's asking people to stop.
He's walking away. It's assault. She should go to jail.
Yeah.
But, everyone's like, oh, they exercise their free speech. Well, my argument is, aren't people who are trying to go to class, people trying to do their jobs in the dean's building, like, isn't there the pursuit of happiness? Now, it's not the guarantee of happiness like these Marxists like to believe that everything should be for free, but the pursuit of happiness. They're paying tuition. They're
Right.
like, shouldn't they be charged with like theft of services or something?
Yeah, I mean, there are a number of opinion pieces that are written out there, and it's a lot of liberals that are saying this is what conservatives don't get about the protests. And as we can see, there is a difference. Obviously, the First Amendment guarantees you the right to protest. There is a difference in voicing your opinion and having your sign and doing those things, and or blocking and causing destruction and defacing property, spray painting statues, tearing down statues, preventing other students from going to their classrooms, preventing students from learning. This type of disruptive activity is not a protest. It's now crimes.
Yeah, I bet if someone blocked their entrance to a Taylor Swift concert, there would be a different spin.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, really, when you think about it, if you are blocking the students from getting into their campus, if you're blocking students from going to class, if you're blocking a pathway, it's a crime and misdemeanor called obstructing a highway. And you're like, but Barrett, there are no highways and cars that are here. Well, it comes from Scotland, where the Highlanders knew the highways and byways, i.e. paths, to get from point to point. And so if you're blocking someone's path, the highway, it's obstructing a highway. So you can actually commit this crime if you lie down in front of an elevator and people can't get on and off the elevator. You're obstructing a highway.
Stop blocking the grocery store aisles. It pisses me off.
I don't know if that counts, but still, how did we get here? How did this supposed rise in anti-Semitism, which I don't think there is. I think we're going to see that it was always here. People are just now emboldened enough to show their face.
Toddlers have gotten their way.
Right. So here's a clip that talks just that.
You can't fight it. What people keep saying, there's no rise in anti-Semitism. There's no rise in anti-Semitism. You just found out that you had lots of anti-Semitic people in your society who've been anti-Semitic this entire time. There's no rise. So I don't understand what people are talking about when they say, we're going to fight anti-Semitism. The only way to fight anti-Semitism is to destroy identity politics and the progressive project. And the reason is very simple. And this is something that my friend Eric Weinstein explained very well when we had him on our show with Sam Harris. The reason for left-wing anti-Semitism, which is, I think, what we're probably talking about to some extent outside the kind of more religious-driven element of this.
He's referring to is the Jews are not considered to be part of that victim part of the identity politics. Like blacks are victims and Palestinians are victims, but Jews are well off, so they're not part of the victim class. And so that's what he means by the identity politics.
Right. And we also have a clip of Yuri Bezmenov, who is a former KGB agent, talking about how the Soviet Union started to infiltrate ideology into the American education system.
Ideological subversion is the slow process which we call either ideological subversion or active measures or psychological warfare. What it basically means is to change the perception of reality of every American to such an extent that despite of the abundance of information, no one is able to come to sensible conclusions in the interests of defending themselves, their families, their community, and their country. It's a great brainwashing process which goes very slow. It takes from 15 to 20 years to demoralize a nation. This is the minimum number of years which requires to educate one generation of students exposed to the ideology of the enemy. In other words, Marxism-Leninism ideology is being pumped into the soft heads of at least 3 generations of American students without being challenged or counterbalanced by the basic values of Americanism. The demoralization process in the United States is basically completed already. Most of it is done by Americans to Americans, thanks to lack of moral standards.
Lack of moral standards, meaning taking God's prayer out of school. And I love how he mentioned having despite having access information like
Right.
we have the internet, but
Right.
yet we're so stupid.
Yeah. So, I mean, when we're talking about this and you hear students, college students that talk about favorably about Marxism and socialism, that is because that has been taught to them. They did not have a realization. And so what has happened is you have in the 80s the KGB doing this, and you have a KGB agent saying exactly how they did it, and you have taken Generation X, who has become professors themselves, and they have learned this material, and they're now teaching it on. And so it is self-replicating to college students if they don't already have a strong family fundamental moral code, a strong family fundamental appreciation of capitalism, and you heard him. They take it in the soft, squishy minds of college students.
Yep. Well, let's see. One of the protesters who locked themselves in Hamilton Hall at Columbia, she apparently did not have a good family upbringing to
Right.
tell her no, because she's demanding the university help feed the protesters.
Right.
This very protester is a paid instructor and PhD candidate studying theories of the imagination and poetry as interpreted through a Marxian lens. That's actually what she does.
Right. Well, I mean, it's so not only is she disrupting the university, but she forgot to bring her lunch pail with her. And one of her big complaints, and her name is Joanna King-Slutsy. One of her big complaints is saying that people and students paid for a meal plan. Therefore, the university needs to allow Uber Eats to come in. My thing is you paid for a meal plan, leave the protest and go to the cafeteria.
Yeah, it's not Uber Eats.
I mean, give me a break. But she's the real thing. It says taking classes on Taylor Swift at Harvard. Long are the days being required to study Hebrew and Greek to graduate Harvard. I believe you said one of your first classes you had to learn how the Taco Bell dog was racist.
Yes, so none of this is new. I mean, again, with CRT feeds right into victimology, and that comes from Marxism. One of my very first assignments, first day of college, was to write an essay about how the Taco Bell dog is racist. I'm like, really? I've been working my butt off for 12 years to get to this? Where's the Shakespeare? Where's the higher learning in this?
Well, we kind of deserve this. We did it to ourselves. We truly have. We've lowered standards. We've let everyone in and every idea, and we've just ignored the warnings that have been, on the field for years and years and decades. And so this was the foreign minister of the United Arab Emirates, UAE, is giving us a warning. This is from 7 years ago.
And let me say this in English so you can understand what I'm saying.
I have translation.
No, I know you have translation, but I just want to make sure you get it right. There will come a day that we will see far more radical extremists and terrorists coming out of Europe because of the lack of decision-making, trying to be politically correct, or assuming that they know the Middle East and they know Islam and they know the others far better than we do. And I'm sorry, but that's pure ignorance.
Yeah, I love it how let me instead of Arabic, let me speak this in English. Well, I've got a translation. No.
English is great.
His English is probably better than most of the people in Mississippi, I mean, honestly.
Or maybe Columbia, for that matter.
Exactly. But still, he's like, no, I'm saying in English so that there's nothing missed in the translation. And he is prophetic. I mean, This is 7 years ago, and we're seeing this. We truly are.
Yeah, but don't get too depressed. There is a little glimmer of hope. In Arizona State, we have frat boys taking down protesters' items. I guess they call them the good old boys for a reason.
Look at these. Right.
We've got the white frat boys throwing away protesters' belongings, and we've got the pigs in brown doing nothing about it, although we are being forced off campus. Pigs in brown.
And they're not the only ones. At UNC, there were some fraternity young men taking down the Palestinian flag and raising the United States flag. Good job, fellas. So, you may ask, why do we care about these protests? They're at colleges, and no one really believes that universities can somehow end this war because, punks are throwing temper tantrums. Well, we should care because we can no longer say, oh, they'll just grow up and they'll come to their senses when they have a job and pay taxes. But, these people have gotten into corporations, made DEI policies, they gained tenure, started teaching, they become lawyers and then judges and senators and make the policies. So these future teachers and politicians hate Jews. And then it will be the Christians. And then they'll turn on each other because the left eats its own.
Yeah, it's really interesting to talk about that it's just this cycle. And it's just like the KGB former KGB agent said that they're going to create this cycle where generations of college students eat this ideology. And there was a famous quote. It was attributed to Khrushchev, but it's been debunked that Khrushchev didn't say it. But it was basically, you can't expect Americans to go from capitalism to communism. They just won't do it. But you can feed them little bites of socialism until they wake up and realize they have communism.
Good quote.
And so, again, it was attributed to Khrushchev, but it's been debunked. He didn't say it. But still, some Soviets said it.
Well, I'd like to close off with, and yes, I know the Israel-Palestine wars has been talked about ad nauseum, and the college protests is being talked about everywhere. But we have to talk about it because 90 years ago, in the 1930s, it wasn't being talked about. And so I'm going to say a famous quote. First, they came for the trade unionist, but I wasn't a trade unionist. Then they came for the communist. I wasn't a communist. Then they came for the Jews, but I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to fight. And finally, evil prevails when good men do nothing. So what can you do? Indoctrinate your kids. Teach them right from wrong. Go to church. Educate people in the right ways where you are able to. Thank you for joining us. Hi, everyone. Thank you for listening. If you enjoy our show with all the stories we share, we would love your support.
And it's as easy as clicking that subscribe or follow button. This will ensure you never miss an episode and keeps us bringing you these important stories. Your support makes a huge difference. Thank you so much for being part of our podcast family.
Thanks, and keep tuning in.